Hey, Woodworker Anonymous here. Right in the middle of a big project, but I need to do a little fine tuning on my table saw extension. I have a router table mounted in here, and just want to tune it up a little bit. I was going to do a complete rebuild on this, but right now there's just not enough time, so I'm just going to do a little tune up. So basically, this is the Delta, what was it, the 36725, I think. Table saw you get at like Lowe's or Home Depot, and I have these metal extension tables on either side right here, and there's another one here, and I left like a big space here too. It was kind of ridiculous, but it's perfect spot for your router table. Just removed that metal table, a couple bolts right here, and then a couple bolts in the side of the table. So easy to do. Took it out, got rid of it. Basically, I just built mine out of plywood. I was going to do it again and do it out of melamine, because melamine is just a better product for sliding stuff on. I have my workbench out of melamine and I really like it. Glue doesn't stick to it. You get glue on it, you just like take a little scraper, we're gone. But I did build this one out of plywood. It's not a complicated build. Obviously, you want to cut your plywood. What I did was, you want to cut your plywood so that it fits perfectly between here and here, with two pieces of hardboard on the outside. So cut your plywood, and so this is like, if this is a quarter, I'm not even sure it is a full quarter, but double that thickness up, subtract it from the measurement you get between the rails, make sure that is exact, test it, and measure it from 3 different places and make sure you get the right fit. You want this to fit snug. You don't want it to be loose. You don't want it to wiggle around when it's in there, and if it's a little tight, that's fine. You can force it in. Obviously not too big, but so then you're going to mount, you're going to drill some holes to bolt through. These were the holes that originally held the metal table in. And I'm going to make them slots. We'll make them, elongate them in this direction so you can fine tune the height of the router table. Also put some ribs. I don't know what else I would call these things, but I just glued in some ribs lengthwise across the width of the table. You don't want this. The router's kind of heavy. Over time, that plywood could start to sag. You don't want that to happen. So I got like 3 ribs going across here out of this is Baltic birch plywood, and that is going to keep the tabletop or the router top perfectly flat, as well as prevent it from warping in the future or sagging at some point. So same thing here. This is the side that actually mates up to the cast iron table, and just locate those holes. Locate those holes, drill them out, center them, and I'm also going to elongate those with a router, just so you can have some adjustability there. Once you got that done, you're basically just going to squeeze it into place here, push the bolts into here. This is stock bar that came with the saw. It's actually very useful, because once we get the table mounted in here, and one of the things I had to do, I made this table full length, but I stopped, the mounting piece here, because that rail, that connecting rail right there, you gotta leave room for it to come through here, and then that leaves you a good place to put some shims. So once you get the table bolted in over there loosely, you can get a nice straight edge like this. Put it across the top of your table. You got your other table in here, and then you'll just use some shims underneath here to like bring this perfectly up to true, and then also bring this perfectly up to true. Then you start tightening down your bolts, and you should be good to go. You can see last time I did it, I actually put a little glue on the wood shims so they wouldn't vibrate out. So I will have to bust those out because I'm going to redo this whole thing. Yeah, I think what happened last time is I didn't get these things elongated enough, and I actually had the table sitting a little low compared to the cast iron top, which I thought would be better than a little bit high, but actually I want it perfect. So that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm taking this apart and redoing it. I want to make sure it's perfectly flat and true to the cast iron top, so that should be a problem. But that's what's going on. I'll show you what it looks like when I get it put back together. A piece of plywood on the top that was carefully measured for width and length. I just want to make sure it came out past the support bar here for the fence rails. On this end, which butts up against the cast iron table, I made sure that that was right on the edge. This rib, because this rib is flush, it's going to actually be flush against the the cast iron top. So once you get the bolts in there, you can really crank down on that once you get it perfectly flat and level with the tabletop. These are the holes that held the original metal side table extension. So we're going to use those same holes. Once we get these in here nice and level and flush at this edge, we'll come over here, we'll shim between the underside of the router table and the top of that support to get this, bring it up level so that the surface is now perfectly level to the top over there. Once this is shimmed up nice and perfect, we got this perfect level, we'll come back in here, we'll put those bolts in and really crank down on them. So this is what it looks like when it's fully installed. It's one of the nice benefits about it is not only do you get the router table, built into your table saw, which saves a little bit of space, but now have a full support on, you can move this all the way out to past 30 inches, and you got full rock solid support, perfectly level with your table, which is already, a lot better than the stock saw. So this is a very integral piece to this router table that's built into my table saw. You got to have a router table fence, right? And this isn't the best fence. It's not the most versatile fence, but this fence gets the job done from almost everything I want to do. And it was very easy to build. And I'm not going to do a build video on it, but I'm going to show it to you. I mean, you can look at it and you could kind of take a note of this, and you can make this yourself simply by looking at it. It's that simple. You got the fence part here. It's got a base, like a little back fence that's going to clamp to the table saw fence. And I incorporated some dust collection, so you got a little cutout here. Do that both on the fence side and on the bottom side, so that when you straddle the bit, the chips are going to be here. I put a couple ribs in here. This not only strengthens the box and makes it more flat and rigid, but it also creates a place to capture the chips as you're routing. I just took a piece of, this is just a piece of hose, or from your shop vac, your wand over there. Just cut a piece off, drilled a hole, pushed it through here, screwed it in. There's a little screw on the inside screwing it. You could use glue or epoxy, it's fine. I use a little piece of plexiglass here just so I can make sure that the dust collection is working. And it does, when you're routing them, you see this thing filling up and going in there. It works really well. So I just unplug the shop vac from the table saw, plug it into the fence, ready to go. It does a great job of dust collection. So basically, you just get this up against your table saw fence, a couple squeeze clamps right here, just clamp it nice and tight to the fence, and then you can use your regular table saw fence to move this thing in and out the way you want. Works really good. It's nice because, say for example, you're trying to get it dialed into the right distance away from the bit or whatever, and you say it's a little too much, a little too less, or you just go right down to your saw guide, and you can just move the fence like a 64th of an inch right here and know exactly how much you're moving it. It works really well. Cheap, simple, basic solution. You can build this in an hour. No kidding. And Another thing, when I used a large panel cutting bit for like some raised panels, and so I just slowly pushed this over the bit and it cut a recess in it. So this even worked for a large diameter bit for panel cutting. Selection works good for edge routing. This port does a really good job of getting all the dust, 90% of it, as you're doing your edge routing. Now, if you're doing like panel surface, you're doing a panel bit, it's really large, most of the dust goes down because these inserts will be gone. You have a large diameter bit in here and it's cutting everything and throwing it down. It's not going to go up in here. What I've done there is, I have a Bosch router, and so it has like a plastic cover right here. So it kind of forces all the router mess to come out here. So I'll just take my shop vac and I'll just like use a twisty tie and have the shop vac, nozzle, crevice nozzle right up in there, run that. And again, does an excellent job and a very poor man's way of a dust collection, but it's very effective. So I wanted to share with you another tip on this router table fence. It's a very basic fence, very versatile. But let's say, for example, you use a lot of common router bits, or let's put it this way, you use router bits that use a lot of common bearings on the top or bottom, whether it's a panel cutting or it's a round over or an OG or whatever type of router bit you have. You might have like a 1/2 inch bearing on the top or a 3/8 inch bearing on the top. And one of the things I found out about using my fence with my table saw fence like this is that once you figure out, you can mess around with the straight edge here and, pulling this thing in and out to make sure you get the bearing to be perfectly flush with the front of the fence. And that's fine. It's not hard. It just takes a few extra minutes all the time. But the thing is, once you do get it dialed in, you realize that, once it's dialed in, all I got to do now is look down at my table saw fence, take the exact measurement, and then I just write it down. I write down these numbers here on my my actual router table fence. And so if I'm putting in a router bit that has a 3/8 inch bearing on it, I just refer to that dimension there. I can dial it in right here on the fence because it's going to be identical every time, and I get a perfect lineup. So kind of a cool thing with a cheap fence that works really well. You got like an easy build for the router table extension. You got an easy build for your router table fence, and it's all extremely functional. It's all can be done in one day. So if you're looking about possibilities or trying to figure out how to do it, this is one way to do it. It works for me. Good luck with your build.